It's really a pleasure to be the person to see you just before you go to lunch and just after you come back from lunch, and I gotta tell you, you look exactly the same. Like I said earlier, before lunch break, I have the honor and the privilege to be your host the second part of the day. Stepping into many's shoes is never, ever, ever fun, but I'll do my best. So, without further ado, we're continuing with our track today with another group of amazing speakers. The next topic that we're going to cover is actually a topic that was mentioned here throughout the morning over and over again, and I think I want to share with you something. You know, I've been doing cybersecurity now for almost 20 years, from the age of 4. And it's really fascinating to see how the discussion has matured, not just from the technological perspective, but also from the business perspective. And we're standing here at a cybersecurity conference, and myself included. I thought I was going to be innovative, you know, talking about it, but apparently everyone is talking about cyber strategy. So yes, we're still talking about the technologies, we're still talking about, you know, the different tools that we're going to use to implement cybersecurity, but I think that the key topic that we're talking about throughout this day is about strategy. And the fact that we as an industry have matured to understand that it's not just about the technology, it's not just about the skill of the people, it's not just about the processes and the ecosystem, it's about everything combined into a holistic strategy. And with that thought in mind, I want to welcome the moderator of our next session, the Cyber Roadmap. I would like to invite the chair to the stage, a very close and good friend of mine, Dr. Yaniv Arel, the head of the research strategy here at the Blavatnik's ICRC Tel Aviv University, and the general manager of the cybersecurity solutions group at Dell EMC. Yaniv, please join me on stage.
Great, Matan. Thank you very much, and it's a pleasant to be here with you this afternoon. And we are going to talk about the Cyber Roadmap. The Cyber Roadmap, which I'll take this clicker to help us to see the next slide. So the Cyber Roadmap, we would like to talk about the role of the large technology companies. We spent this morning talking about the role of governments. We are going to talk a lot about the role and the community of startups that we have here in our country and generally in the industry. And now we want to dedicate this session to talk about the role of the companies. And we say that in this era, in this very important moment, we believe that there is a very important role to the large companies to lead and to find a way how to take our industry forward and how to take the challenges and to bridge the important gaps that we have today in our cyber industry and in our society. We want to mention and we want to say that we still expect the large companies to lead us and to find a way to jump the big leaps and to find the techniques and the mechanisms and to bring the energy in order to lead and to make the great efforts. And when we talk about the great efforts, so we mean, of course, technological, we mean conceptual, we mean business, and we mean many others. Part of them may be also to create ecosystems, like we have here in Israel, in Beersheba, or in other locations, but these are part of the things that we expect also large companies to be involved in this era. And we are going to talk here in this session about roadmaps and about what are the large companies at that moment look forward and they share with us about their roadmaps. And you know, when we talk about roadmaps, we believe that the companies can bring the efforts and the roadmap in various aspects. It can be the aspects of the R&D, the platforms, the R&D and to bring their experience, to bring their expertise, to find the efforts and the other ways that they are going to bridge these gaps that we see here. So with no any other beginnings and any other discussion, we'll start with our session, and as chairman of this session, I will not share with you this afternoon the roadmap of Dell EMC, but we will hear very interesting talks of my three colleagues from Microsoft, from Intel, and from IBM Security to hear their views and their roadmaps. So I would like to invite our first speaker here this afternoon, Mr. Bharat Shah, Corporate Vice President of Microsoft Azure. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Harel, and good afternoon, Tel Aviv. I am honored and excited to be here in front of some of the sharpest minds and smartest entrepreneurs in cybersecurity. With the introduction from Dr. Harel, I'd like to share some of the breakthroughs that are being tried out and some of our thoughts on how things change going forward. Not a single day goes by without you hearing about somebody getting into some networks, stealing data, ransomware attacking your data, etc. It does appear like the deck is pretty heavily loaded against the defenders. And let's see why. Typically, what we see happening is that there is a lot of energy and a lot of effort being put into protecting the perimeter, looking at perimeter defense, even analytics at the perimeter level. This, of course, assumes everybody is patching and keeping everything up to date and using multi-factor. And if you do all that and then you protect your perimeter, what you see typically happening is that the attackers, especially these days with automation, keep trying to find a chink, and the defenders work hard, relentlessly trying to protect against these kind of attacks. As far as whenever there is scale and humans involved, sooner or later, something's going to go wrong, and it takes one little mistake or one little gap somewhere left unprotected for the attackers to get in. So this is one of the most common problems that attackers get in. So now, let's think about what needs to happen to rethink how we've been doing things. And I know a lot of you are already on their journey, but let's look at what needs to be done to kind of rethink what is going on. First and foremost, as you see with this kind of a model, where one little mistake, one little gap lets the bad guy in, well, you got to realize that bad guys are probably already in. Maybe there are multiple of them. Even if you do detect something like this, you've got to have a tough time figuring out what have they done, how many toeholds have they created, where are they lurking. You can try evicting them, but if you don't know where all they have been leaving backdoors, it'll be tough to evict them. Worse, even if you do manage to evict them, you've got to know how they got in, run the forensics to be able to figure out what was your mistake, where was the gap, to really go make things better. So this is a really tough problem that we really need to see how we're going to solve that. So we got to change the way we're doing this, and the way we have been thinking about and actually acting on is that we've actually expanded our perimeter defense further. And we have lots and lots of sensors that we use inside the network in addition to all the perimeter sensors. I would assert that every resource you have that you're trying to protect is actually a pretty good sensor as long as you can collect the logs and telemetry from those sensors. But we use more sensors. We are a big fan of identity-based sensors. Everything that we can do with identity, every attack masquerades as an application or an end user or a machine. The more identity-based sensors that you can leverage, better it is. We use endpoints, identities, our resources, and we also kind of have found a good kind of correlation to looking at crashes that we see that relate back to attacks. So the first thing, lots of sensors, lots of data that you need to actually collect, and the more sensors you have, the wider the aperture, the faster you will detect. Further, collecting lots and lots of data and actually keeping them for a while will then allow you to then go back and do better forensics and understand where the attackers came in from, what else they've done. So that's the first thing. Lots of sensors, leverage your resources, collect data, go look at the data and kind of have a very broad aperture by which you are looking at it. But that's not the only thing. Oh, actually, here's the animation that shows that as the attackers move along, somewhere along the way, a sensor will fire, or maybe more than one sensor will fire. Previously, the defender makes a mistake, attacker gets in. Now, the attacker has to trigger one of the sensors that we have for them to be detected. And the other thing about the sensors is we really don't think that you can look at all the telemetry and the logs that you're collecting in silos and in isolation. Being able to connect the telemetry and the logs from your sensors and have a broader context of what is going on actually is the power you have. We call it the intelligence security graph. And you know, there is, for quite a few years now, people write that attackers operate with graphs, defenders use lists. We think the defenders need to actually look at the graph as well. So if you really look at all the data you're collecting and all the alerts from the sensors and actually have a context around it, you will be in a better position to actually not just detect faster with the wide aperture of sensors, but also have forensics to evict and clean up. So that kind of summarizes kind of the first step of how we're thinking about this problem and what we're doing. Next, almost every customer I meet, every organization is going through a digital transformation, and cloud is one of the best ways for the organizations to accelerate their digital transformation. Every customer who does a pretty good job with their on-premise resources are concerned. Well, what about the cloud? What happens to all the resources? Do I lose the visibility? Well, I'd like to assert that most cloud vendors, and I speak for Office 365 and Azure, actually do a very good job of looking at wide range of sensors and collecting lots of data, and they do it at almost no cost to you. We are already doing it all the time. So your resources in clouds are just an extension of how most well-managed organizations are running their infrastructure today. And this happens at almost no cost. The other thing I want to talk about is what I will call as the cloud effects. For us, your resources may just be one tenant, but we have millions and millions of other tenants. And any unique attack on one tenant actually is not as unique when you look across millions and millions of tenants in the cloud. So we have what I'll call as the cloud effects to further amplify our ability to detect and do forensics and even go as far as attribution of where the attacks are coming from. So, and I talked about the intelligence. At the scale at which we operate, for us, this is a very unique value. You know, we look at 30 billion plus authentications, billions of Windows machines and endpoints, millions of servers, billions of emails which we actually detonate and clean up and can detect attacks. And anything that any detonation or any malware in email, within minutes, we get to apply it to all the mailbox in the cloud. Ditto with any attack on any VM. Within minutes, we apply to all the VMs. So this is very unique power that we actually bring to bear through the cloud for all the assets in the cloud. So we kind of talked about the two big things. Your assets in any cloud, and certainly 365 and Azure, are just an extension of how you would do things. We do a lot of things on your behalf, almost no extra cost for you, and the cloud effects really, really helps in kind of driving huge amount of value in terms of ability to detect and protect in ways only a big cloud vendor can bring to bear at the scale at which we operate. To kind of go back and recap then, the more you look at, the wider the aperture, the more sensors you have, and the more you look at your resources, the better your ability to detect what is going on. So starting with your perimeter, inside your networks, next click stop, outside your network, and across the cloud. If you're going to collect all this data, that's going to be a lot of data and a lot of volumes and volumes of data that you will have to process. Even though cloud vendors such as us do a phenomenal job with machine learning to kind of identify threats, at some stage, human limits will kick in if you're going to go up across looking at all the alerts that are sent. And really the answer to that has to be a much more fundamental adoption of machine learning and cloud intelligence and artificial intelligence. We have today applied tons and tons of that, but I see a world where even if everyone has the larger organizations that they have their own security staff, has to actually take steps towards embracing machine learning and artificial intelligence to actually go protect the resources. The other thing that I will say is that even today, we are doing a pretty damn good job with machine learning and artificial intelligence. We're still in the infancy of where we potentially will be 5 years from now. I'd leave you with a very simple, pardon my sports analogy, but I can guarantee you that 5 years from now, if you look back at what we are doing today and maybe even the next year, it'll look like we are in the little leagues compared to professional baseball. And so the opportunity for what we can do going ahead with cloud harnessing power, analytics, and machine learning is tremendous. So to kind of recap, the more sensors you have, the faster will be your detections. The more data you collect and the more data you can process, the better the near real-time detections you will have. But you'll also have great forensics and ability to see what is going on. You couple that with cloud effects, you get some tremendous cloud effects and benefits from just having a cloud provider look across millions and millions of tenants to actually find uniqueness of attacks in a very uniform way. And sooner or later, your security organizations, but certainly the cloud providers today, are really making big bets on machine learning and artificial intelligence. These things together will fundamentally change the equation and make defense a far more viable and easier option than what we see today. Thank you.